community, and we go to Bodega Bay to get the crabs. That is a beautiful place, and it's a fun drive up there.
Yeah, yeah. There's just a lot of good rocks, and when it's windy, you get these huge explosions kind of off the side of the rocks. It's pretty slick. So anyway,
But you have to watch out for the birds, don't you?
the what?
The birds.
When it's windy, the birds are not too much trouble.
It's an Alfred Hitchcock reference.
The film The Birds.
Yeah. That's the let's see here.
Alex Goldner knew that. Well, that's a fun fact.
Well, I didn't know Psycho was filmed in Phoenix. That kind of shocked me after all those years.
That makes a lot of sense for anyone who's ever been in Phoenix.
Well, at least if you stay through the summer, then you are a little psycho.
Well, there's Flagstaff.
Okay, so I'm not going to figure it out for some reason. Now my current iteration on my laptop, which has worked before, doesn't have my. Anyway, it's a long story. So, Bill, I'll depend on you and then Phil to manage the questions. I can't see them right now.
Oh, okay.
And if you guys have a control of Makana audio, could you enable it?
Yeah, I don't have control of that. So, anyway, so and also if someone can go into the YouTube account and grab the embed and put it into Makana, that'd be great. I can't get in right now, and for some reason my computer is not logging me in correctly. So, all right. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody here. Welcome to office hours. We're starting a little late. I think our latest start ever, 7:10. So I apologize for that. We are, if you are just getting here, if you're in YouTube, you can get a link and you can actually join Zoom here. If you're an attendee, we have a much larger group today, which is great. This is a really run by the attendees and the panelists. The attendees are asking questions, voting on those questions, and that really drives the entire conversation of how we do it. This is not a show that we build up and try to figure out, and we have a lot of meetings. We wait for the attendees to ask us the questions that they have, and then we depend on the panelists to discuss those questions. So it's super important that you're involved and you're participating in the event. And anyway, we're glad to have you. Today we're going to start going back into our second hours, and in some cases third hours this week. So today we're going to be talking about cooking shows. I know that sounds crazy that we're talking about cooking shows, but the reason we're going to talk about those cooking shows is that I think that we have a couple people here that are working on them, that are building up their own cooking shows, and there's a huge opportunity right now for that kind of live content. As the pandemic has progressed, I've watched a lot of people learning how to cook, and I think that there's actually a pretty interesting opportunity to build that out. So what we're going to talk about in the second hour is what to some of the basics of what to think about when you're putting those together, and how to do that. I know it's a slight very vertical, but it's going to be, I think, an interesting conversation. I think it's something we should all be thinking about a little bit if we're looking for business opportunities to move forward. Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about Atmos. Later today, by the way, at 10 o'clock, we're going to have a second ear. I sent the link out with your announcement this morning, but there's a second ear experience for the Blackmagic launch event. And that's going to be that second hour is going to be really that third hour, the 10 o'clock, is going to be us just talking about both the production value and what they're talking about. So they're going to be talking about DaVinci, but we'll talk about whatever they're announcing, but we'll also talk about the cameras and everything else. And then on tomorrow tomorrow we're going to talk about Atmos, and Wednesday we'll talk about Vision. These are going to be let me just turn off my mic. So these Atmos and Vision, I think, are also going to be very important to us as a group because of the opportunities that are related to. There's a lot of opportunities because of the Apple iPhone, with surround sound and with Vision, and so I think that there's a real opportunity for us to take some ground there. So we're going to talk a little bit about it informally. We're going to then hopefully get some folks in to talk about it some more as we move forward. Thursday, we're going to talk about multi-language streaming. There's been a couple requests around that of understanding how to do a multi-language stream and how to make that work. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the options are and how to make that go. And then Friday, we're going to talk more about the business end of production, I'm still working on the subject matter, but we'll be talking about that. And then Saturday, of course, education. So that's what's coming up this week. We're kind of bringing back the second hours, and we'll keep on kind of increasing what we're doing there as we move forward into the winter. So anyway, Bill, do we have any questions? And I can't hear you, Bill.
There we go. They unmuted me. I didn't realize that one was muted. Yes, we have a bunch, and the first two actually come in from typical panelist who's not here today, TJ Asher out of Minneapolis. His first question is, Elgato Stream Deck and Mac users, can the Stream Deck be configured to launch an app and close an app with the push of a button on the Mac?
Go ahead, Jason.
Absolutely. There's a plugin called App Launcher, but I've found just the nerd in me finds that it's much easier to just push terminal commands. You don't need to know the PID, and I'll put some links in Makana. But yes, it's quite simple. It would be a single line in terminal, pkill X if it was Slack, Slack, or kill all Slack, but that would be more of a forced quit. So yes, the answer is it's absolutely doable, and it's quite simple.
Any next question?
Okay, moving on to TJ's second one, which is, since all the new iPhones can record video in Dolby Vision, yet Final Cut Pro 10 still has no support for it, when can we expect Dolby Vision support in Final Cut Pro 10? Fenwick. Chris isn't here today.
Go ahead, Alex.
So I imagine the Apple are going to talk about this tomorrow, their event, starting in 27 and 3/4 hours. So they're going to probably mention Final Cut Pro working with Dolby Vision, but you never know, they may not. But next Thursday is the Final Cut Pro FCPX Creative Summit, and that's called the FCPX Creative Summit event is happening, and there's going to be a day at Apple, and Apple are going to be talking about as far as we know, at least the current version of Final Cut Pro, and there's a chance they'll talk about the next version of Final Cut Pro. It may be available that day. At previous FCPX Creative Summits, they actually released the new version of Final Cut on the day that they talk about it. They have said that by the end of the year, when the iPhone 12 was launched, by the end of the year, Final Cut Pro will be able to work with Dolby Vision, but we don't know to what extent that is. It might be able to read the metadata. We don't know if it's going to be able to set the metadata, but it may also be able to pass the metadata on to Resolve. So we'll see.
And what I will say is that I can, shooting with an iPhone 12, it is going to be imperative for us to understand how vision works and how to take advantage of HDR. I can just tell you, as you use the iPhone 12, your eye tunes very quickly and everything looks dark. Like everything around you, every monitor, everything starts to look dark. It is going to make a profound difference in people's expectation of video, because your eye tunes very, very, very fast, much faster than I expected, to the new dynamic range, and things just look really muddy when you're not doing it. So I think Apple's pushing what people will consider acceptable pretty hard and fast. So it's, your eyes will get used to that bright and that much more dynamic, much richer image, and you won't be able to go back to, I think it's going to push a lot of consumers to buy more monitors, more TVs, and so on and so forth. But it also means that we have to, as producers, understand how to do it, which is why we're going to spend more time working on that. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody is planning on going to the Creative Summit, but I'm doing a little thing on the first day of the summit about pitch videos. And if anybody is interested in the summit, they give those of us who are presenting there a couple of free passes. And I think I'm going to try to figure out a way maybe to give one out on the show tomorrow. I haven't figured out a way to do that, but if somebody wants to go, stay tuned.
Absolutely. Victor?
I know that the Pro Max is not in the wild yet, but can anyone explain to me, is there going to be such a huge difference between the 12 and the Pro Max to make it worth that largely bigger amount of money?
Go ahead, John Preto, and then Sky.
The Max has a larger sensor size, and my bird's happy about that. And the image stabilization is different on the Max than it is on the regular Pro.
Yeah, and it's got I believe it has a longer telephoto as well. So there's a couple different changes there. I know that I have a test right now. It's a 12 because I have to go, but I haven't put any numbers on it. It's just literally a camera to me. I'm going to be getting the Max as well. Sky.
Yes, I was very fortunate to recently get a job that allowed me to pay for that in Max.
There you go. Very good.
Thank you. But my point would be to Victor and to you, Alex, is yes, I took the iPad out yesterday and I did an internal structure of the LiDAR, and with that simple app that you suggested, and that I also did my backyard. And yes, you learn a lot in a hurry of the abilities and limitations of that tool. But to your point, Victor, I will find out. We're going to tell me what you want to test. We're going to push that limit.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else? Okay, next question.
Moving along to Brian Anderson, who asks, I have to run a 2-day advanced Zoom training that requires playback of a 45-minute video to the audience each day. I'll be using OBS for countdown web pages and so forth. How would you handle video playout? Zoom video sharings, OBS to the Zoom virtual camera suggestions?
Well, I can tell you from our perspective that we have to always weigh frame rate versus resolution. That becomes always the thing that you're always deciding on. What's more important in your video? If it's got lots of small graphics and other things that people have to look at, then you really have to lean towards resolution, and you're going to use a screen share. If it's just regular video that you're talking about, that if what you're watching as an attendee on webinars is good enough. That's the other thing, is you have to know what resolution are you going to actually get, going out. And so the one thing I would do is get somebody, whether it's Guy or somebody else, if you're doing a meeting, get somebody with a room to join to make sure that it's 720 in your video. Then you really have the right resolution to do that, to play it out. You want to make sure that but webinars, as I said, are kind of a dumpster fire when it comes to the resolution. So, if you don't get the upgrade for the webinar to 1080p, then it is, everyone's watching at 640 by 360 if you do video, and that's a real bummer. Brian?
So just to give you a little more color on that, it's going to be video of a live interaction. This is a training to train people on how to do a live diagnostic for individuals with autism. And so it's going to be a video of an expert doing this diagnosis with somebody, and participants who are learning the process are going to be watching. So they need good video and the best video possible and the best sound possible, because both matter in this diagnostic tool. So I'm struggling with the best way to go, and I'm intending to. I'm going to try and convince the client to buy a room for a month, so that we at least get that at it. And it is going to be a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, the meeting with the room will be reasonably good, and then you can turn up all the dials, and I would go through video at that point. Go ahead, Jason, and then Jeffrey.
Brian, I'm curious, is it going to be used after the fact? Is this something that you're going to want to cut the video in, or is it live and then nothing?
No, it won't be. And in fact, I get the video from the expert probably the day of, and I have to destroy it afterwards because this is a proprietary thing that can't be released. So it's just for the people to watch. And then based on what they have seen the expert do in the video, answer questions, ask questions, take tests. So,
Jeffrey?
Still, what I would recommend is to actually, if you get the video in time, is to put it up on Vimeo, put it up on YouTube as unlisted, and then just send the link at the time, and then of course destroy it after the fact. That way, if everything else fails, there is the backup. You can say go here, and you can watch the video, and that might
QR
help
code
out
would be nice as a backup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I don't know enough about OBS to do it. I mean, I play out videos all the time from Memo. That's what I use it for, to insert it into meetings. I just line it up. It has some issues. I can't skip through it once it starts playing. So you have to, once you start playing, you play it.
So to a virtual camera?
Yeah, Memo shows up really nicely as a virtual camera. So it doesn't have, you don't need anything else. You just turn on the Memo's virtual camera, and then it shows up as a camera there's not that in between NDI and all the other stuff. Doesn't happen there. That's one of the reasons I use it, is it's just a simpler pipeline to get into Zoom. So I find it to just be more seamless than I experimented with OBS and very quickly just decided that it's free, but I felt like there were more tools that I wanted to use in Memo so I went ahead and went down that path. And I have a couple of machines that I bought Memo for to make that work. So I find on a Mac, it's the best solution for Zoom, and that's all I use it for. It's all I use Memo for is Zoom, is just Zoom calls and inserting video into it. I find it to be a more stable platform for that. If I could scrub in the video, I'd be happier. But Oliver has that request. Go ahead, Stuart, and then John.
I feel from your comment there, you probably realize where my answer would be with NDI and OBS, because OBS can have NDI output. If you've already got the other things like the countdown and the web pages and what have you coming in OBS, OBS will be a simpler workflow to just have one desktop that you're looking at to
Yeah,
play the
I would
video,
definitely propose. I
play the
wouldn't.
webs.
If you
But
went to Memo, you would
again,
throw everything else out. You know, like you would just
yeah,
do it in Memo
for,
rather
if
than
it's on
OBS.
PC, OBS. If it's on Mac, go with Memo Live.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, you guys answered most of my questions. So if you're on a Mac, there's no virtual cam driver built into OBS like there is on the PC. PC has a built-in virtual cam driver. I use the NewTek virtual cam driver with OBS on the Mac, and it runs okay. OBS runs better on PC than it does on Mac.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So going back to the original question about Dolby Vision, I have an iPhone 12, and I actually shot kind of a fun clip of my son. He got booked to do a VO the other day, and we did a little BTS of his thing. And I wanted to see if I could share it with you guys on a share screen, but obviously I don't have those permissions.
Well,
but
I don't think it'll show. The vision won't show through.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, but so I have a 100-year-old home with really kind of dark wood, and yeah, you're right. I mean, it was dark, but I'm in an electric wheelchair, so I have like a built-in dolly, and it's
great.
So yeah, so with my chair and the new 12 and everything and stabilization, it looked brilliant.
Yeah.
But you're right, Alex, it was very dark.
Yeah. No, it goes both. Yeah, it's both darker and brighter at the same time. Go ahead, Guy, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if anybody has an important event that needs an HD boost, just shoot me a message in Discord and I'll be happy to attend. I mean, I only have to be in there for 20 seconds and it's not hard. So anybody, and that includes attendees, anybody on here, I have 4 Zoom rooms. So the offer's out there, anybody who wants a bump.
Thank you. Absolutely. Jeffrey.
Trust me, it works.
Yeah, I was going to tell Brian, if you want, contact me and then we'll run through a couple different pieces of software to see which one works best for you in the Zoom rooms. And I don't know when the event is, but if you need help from me there, let me know.
Yeah, this is in January. I appreciate the offer, both Guy and Jeff. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Next question.
Hey, Mitchell's in Washington. Is anyone signed up for some of the small online events this week, like SMPTE 2020 or Akamai Edge? Any of the sessions in the conference agenda seem particularly interesting and exciting? If so, what? And he says, no, most of these start on Tuesday, though some have already started today. So is anybody?
I also believe that Unreal has a Unreal filmmaking day or whatever tomorrow, but it conflicts with the Apple launch event, and so I had to make a choice. that one runs all day. I can't cover that. So it's or it runs a couple hours. So the Apple one was more specific, but that's the only reason we're not kind of looking at it. Go ahead, Jason.
Does anyone have any idea what SMPTE is going to announce?
No idea. I don't know if there's any announcement. I mean, SMPTE usually is just more engineering docs. Like there, it's less of a announcements and more of a
release the specs.
Yeah. So go ahead, Mickey. You were gonna say something.
Yeah, I was just going to agree. SMPTE is a lot of talks of other engineers and not so much announcements of like new technologies or new what do you call this, new standards. It's mostly like engineering talks.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stuart.
Maybe the SMPTE standard number for Dolby Vision.
Maybe.
Rec 3030. Just keep incrementing.
Next question.
Okay, James in Dublin says, any recommendations for an inexpensive Pyle or Polsen alternative headset, as they only seem to be available in the USA?
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that they were hard to get elsewhere. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Once again, I'll talk about the Micronic, which is what I've been using and back and forth here. They're based in the UK. So if you're in the UK area, you should be able to get these fairly easily.
What also means
Micronic.
Probably there's more support internationally if it's, if they're based in the UK. So that's a good sign. Yep. Good. Micronic. And can you spell that out again?
I'll put a link in the show notes. It's micronic.co.uk.
Okay. That's great. Next question.
Next question comes from our own Chris Comfort here in the panel in New York. Can you please explain again why 5G isn't going to be all it's claimed to be? I know this is old hat by now, so sorry.
Go ahead, John.
There's two versions of 5G. I did a podcast on this about a year ago, and there's millimeter wavelength. I don't know. They're putting something on your roof though, aren't they, Chris?
Verizon already has towers up there. And I think you guys told me that there's gonna be a cone of silence around my actual apartment because it's directly above me. I'm a T-Mobile user right now anyway. I've got the Fios for my home internet, but I'm just more curious about the technology in general. It just seems like, I think Alex and other people have always said that this is not going to be the thing that these cell phone providers keep claiming it's going to be. And I was just curious what that was all about. I just can't remember.
The main thing is that it is the real issue there is that it'll take a long time for it to actually get out to everybody. Every transponder is the coverage is, very small, hundreds of feet. So they have to kind of wash everywhere. So conference centers were one of the big targets, downtown cities, city arteries, but even just covering a whole city like San Francisco is going to be challenging. So it's very low latency, but it's going to require an enormous outlay. And the problem is that there's going to be huge chunks of the country that won't get it, and so it's going to be, in the big cities and in eventually urban areas, you'll get it. But 6G will be out before they get 5G penetration into most places where I grew up and where I live and where I live now. I don't ever expect to see, I expect to see 5G, sometime 5 years from now where I live, and so I think that's the real challenge is that it just takes a lot to get it out there, and to get the penetration. And so it's not that it isn't fast. It's just that it is, it's not that it's not fast, that it's just going to take a long time to get to everywhere. And if it's not everywhere, I think that, and again, I don't trust the cell phone companies anymore.
I thought there was also
I don't have any confidence that that we're not going to just get hosed, so I just think that, this is going to be a huge boondoggle, right? The way it looks right now, I think that we're going to get massively charged for it. It's not going to be reliable. It's going to be overrun. I think that I think it's going to be horrible. I think that it's mostly because I just feel like the cell providers are, I'm generally like, hey, let the market do its thing. But this is a really big part of the market. And I just think that they're going to completely screw it up, and so I think that it's the infrastructure required is so big that they'll have complete control over it because it's so expensive to reproduce, and so they're going to get this out there, and then we're going to end up spending hundreds of dollars a month to get access to what we need, rather than, because there's so much data, they're going to have us, and so I think that, I think it's going to be very spotty in where it's supported. But I think that this is just a disaster. Like, in my opinion, like it's just going to be disastrous, and they're looking at it as this is the best thing ever, because they know that they can, once they get this infrastructure in, then they essentially have monopoly control, over what our access, because no one else can put the money into doing it again, or the time that they're going to just jack up all of our prices, and then overdrive they're going to basically do, like, if you look at what AT&T Uverse, that's the future of what we're going to get, which is that AT&T Uverse falls apart all the time. Like it just, and so, we're just putting our hands into some, and again, I'm not generally this kind of person, but I've just watched this I have grown to just really have a distaste for the cell companies, and what they're doing, and how they keep, in the United States, how they, restrict pole access. The only reason they don't have competition is because they drag you into I have a friend that has an ISP. They drag you into 10 years of fighting. He had to fight for 10 years for pole access because he was delivering 1 gig for $80 a month, and that just terrified AT&T, and so instead of letting them do it, they just, and our government lets them do that, and so the thing is that I think that I think the other side of this is I think there's going to be a growing interest in turning this. I think that the mistake that they're making, we'll see in the next decade, is they're going to go too far down the other path, and more people that would traditionally be market first like me are going to want deep regulation, and possibly you making them a utility. I think that they should just be made a utility at this point. I think it's information. This is far more important than our phone lines. We call that a utility, so I think that, again, it's not my general state, like to say that, but these guys are real shysters, so, I think that, we're going to be paying for it. And again, we could have run fiber for the price that they're doing it. We could have just run fiber to the home, and I think that that's, and that would be scalable, and we'd have reliable internet for not very much money. And instead we're dealing with this, hand-to-hand combat. And it's just anyway. So that's my opinion about why I'm not excited about 5G. Jeffrey, and then Jason.
I call it the toilet paper of so 48 equals 96. But the reality is all these different networks are creating their own name for 5G, and they've got different definitions, and so it's going to be like HD video versus DVD versus some other formats versus some other formats. It's going to be so too muddy with frequencies. It's just going to be horrible. Yeah.
And Bill, I have a little bit of a 911 with my little project here, so I'm going to let you keep on running the conversation for a little while. I'll be
no
back.
problem at all. You go take care of what you need to take care of. We'll be here. Okay, Jason next, and then Stuart. Go, Jason.
All right. So, Chris, there are a lot of things at play here, and Alex's answer was very good, but he hit on a whole bunch of things up to and including the state of the FCC and the Schedule 2 or Title II carrier. And there's no way on earth I'm going to take all the time to address all of that. So I'm going to try to answer your question really specifically. There are two types of 5G, sub-6 and millimeter wave. Sub-6 is going to be cross-carrier. There will be many sub-6s. When most people hear 5G, what they will actually end up with is sub-6. Millimeter wave is exclusively Verizon, which is why they're making so much noise about it. Where you live very specifically is one of the few cases where not only do you have a shot at actually benefiting from this, but you have a shot at benefiting from these technologies in a reasonable time frame. And, both things are good for you. The rest of the United States, not so much. This is an iPhone 12 Pro. It gets 5G in Albuquerque, sub-6, of course, not millimeter wave. Is it faster? I don't know. Carrier aggregation for VoLTE and LTE in general is, as far as I'm concerned, fast as I've ever needed it to be. Would it be, is faster better? Absolutely. This is what I do. That said, I just, don't worry. It's not the next thing. Just don't worry about it unless you are really, truly saturated. I'd be more worried for you about, 2.4 gigahertz being saturated ad nauseum in New York.
Fair enough. Stuart, then Courtney. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm going to have to look up some of the things that Jason just mentioned, because like here in Australia, we've really only got one type of 5G. But it's a different system in how all of our telcos are organized and the laws around them and what have you. So some of the things that are happening there will be different. But what I wonder with 5G, especially given its limited range and the fact that it's very easy for it to be interfered with, as in like the signal just goes away, you lose it. I've used it last November at a racetrack and it was fine, but we had very few people around us using it, which is odd given we were in an area where there were a lot of engineering students and they're always ahead of the ball. But what I really wonder, especially with 5G, is it going to be a massive failure worldwide if something like Starlink comes in and provides satellite network speed to everyone on the planet?
I think the big thing,
depending on where you are in the US, you might actually be able to sign up for a beta trial of that now.
I don't think that real-time communication like what we're doing here is going to do very well in Starlink. I think that's the real challenge, is that it's a mesh network. It may be semi-low latency, but I think we're going to end up with a lot of, it will be good for what it's good for, but it's not, I don't think that it's going to
They're
replace.
talking about latency that's low enough to play games online.
I'm sorry, the
other
jitter
people.
will kill it on that alone.
There's latency and then there's jitter, and I think there's going to be a very high jitter rate. So it's I think that's going to be the issue. But we'll see. I mean, that's still probably, before we see it mature, probably still another 4 or 5 years. Mickey?
Yeah, just on the discussion bandwidth, like I don't know of any carrier around the world that actually allows normal consumers to saturate the LTE's bandwidth. So like why I at the moment, like 5G, we can't even fully utilize LTE. So why the need for 5G at the moment?
Right. Go ahead, Courtney, and then Mike.
Yeah, if you look, this is a map of Verizon's 5G millimeter wave in the dark red there, you can see. So it only is going to carry, if you're in a moving car or something, you'd have to stay on one particular street. And if you go off on a side street, you'll lose it. And it might work good for stationary reception. You know, if you put a nice antenna up in your window or something, you might get a pretty good 5G reception as long as you're not moving, if you're on one of the streets where there happens to be an access point. But you can see here very few streets, and in LA it's the same thing. It's like right around Staples Center and right around Hollywood and Highland, the tourists, Hollywood and Vine, where the tourists are, but you stray more than about 3 or 4 streets and nothing. So
Got about 3 blocks of the PCH. I mean, come on, who needs anything else?
Right.
Yeah, there's that shot in there, Verizon's ad with the 3 trucks lined up on the beach. It's in Malibu. Yeah, it's about 3 blocks. You look at the coverage map, and it's about 3 blocks around where those trucks were parked.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, so rookie question. Verizon just put in a tower literally maybe 20 to 30 yards from the back of my house where my kitchen is, which has lots of windows. And even though they say that 5G is only available outdoors, which is what they say in the fine print, do you think I would have a shot at getting that signal?
No idea.
Yes.
Because I got windows.
It probably would. At that distance, probably.
Yeah, I would think so too. So I'm curious to try it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Go
thanks,
ahead,
guys.
Well, again,
Yeah, the
I-
one
I
I'm-
see-
well,
I seem to throw the philosophical question in. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. And the other question, of course, is market saturation. Again, when I saw Sony building content for 4K because we'd already filled up all of the market with HD, so now they needed to justify their existence and sell you something else. So I'm wondering, do we need 5G?
Again, I think that I don't know if we need it. Like maybe they'll figure it out. I just think that the there is a lot of just business case, people trying to justify it from a business case and again, it's going to be a huge lift, and we'll have 6G before we get 6G will be coming out before the 5G. And I think that the other thing that I've noticed is that the quality of my phone calls continually, as all these every time these upgrades happen, the quality of my phone calls get worse. So like the actual using it at my phone as a phone is getting worse every year, where it's falling apart and it's dropping off. And I'm just kind of amazed that, like, sure, you can do all these whiz bang things, but I still want to be able to actually make a phone call, and have a synchronous conversation with folks. And all these things don't seem to be making it any better, and again, I think that especially I think part of their problem is in a pandemic world, what I really want is fiber in my house. Like I just want, I want a piece of glass that goes into my house and have a 1 gig connection up and down and not pay a lot of money for it. And I think that's what, I wish we would focus on, is getting everybody's houses and town. The number one thing for a town right now, I was talking to a town over the weekend, and number one thing they should be doing right now is making sure that everybody has cheap internet access right now. Because people are leaving Silicon Valley in droves, and what they're making their choices on. And I've been saying this to small towns for 2 decades now, but what people are making their choices are based on bandwidth. How much does bandwidth cost in this town? If I want to leave, Silicon Valley, if I want to leave San Francisco, if I want to leave the Bay Area, I want to go somewhere else, the first thing they're going to look at is how much does 1 gig cost me, or how much is 100 megs up and down? And they want up and down, not 10 megs up or whatever. And so, but towns that haven't, some towns have invested in that, made it easier, did whatever they needed to do. They're in a pretty good position, to attract, people, and they should be promoting it if they are. But the towns that haven't been ahead of this are, they're not an option for these folks that are leaving, that are high income individuals, high taxes. They'll buy big houses, they'll move, all kinds of things up, but they're not going to go somewhere where it's really expensive and painful to get, to get good bandwidth.
Well, and historically too, you look at the big towns that were built on rivers because that was the means of commerce. So that's a valid point.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. We've taken this one for a long way. Go ahead.
Okie dokie. We're moving on to Lucas Herzog of Mainz. Says, do you have recommendations for webcams in the $150 range other than the VDO ones? Those are not available in Germany, and the Brio unfortunately breaks the budget.
C920 would be what we would get. Go ahead, Hosma.
Yeah, there's an Afrikaans term here in South Africa called smous. That's somebody who buys and sells things. So I became a Logitech smous recently. So I know I sent a whole lot of Brios, which is my preferred webcam. But as you suggested, C920, it's almost half the price. And it's a very good alternative to the Brio.
I mean, in the pre-pandemic days, the C920 was $80, and now it's floating in the 120, 130 range. But, for us, it's C920. We've really standardized on. We've had a lot of color issues with the VDO 360, and we also don't think the resolution is quite as high as the 920. So we did buy a bunch of the VDO 360s and then chose to move on. So the C920s, and then Brio, then Huddle Cam, then Blackmagic cameras. That's kind of what we make decisions against when we do those. And Huddle Cams are really just for close up. That's what we're testing them right now. We haven't started deploying them, but being able to control the remote pan tilt zoom, and being able to have and have an HDMI output are things that we're interested in the Huddle Cams. But anyway, so that's kind of our kind of what we're looking at there. But the Brio and the 920s are really the thing that we've latched onto. There's also the Stream Cam, but the Stream Cam has been very hard to get. It just kind of came out during pandemic. By the way, I don't know if anyone saw, as a note of things that are hard to get, if you're going to buy audio equipment, it's already getting more expensive because of the AKM fire. So if you haven't heard about it, just search audio AKM fire. All the AD converters that are used in just about everything, the fab that makes them burn to the ground. So
when, Alex, when?
A couple weeks ago. And I've been talking to a couple folks in the chain, and components that were costing $5 each are now $250 each. So this is not like a little. It's a complicated problem. It's going to take 6 months for them to possibly.
So buy my Dante adapters now. Is that what you're saying?
You may just find that there's supply chain issues. But if you want to know more about it, audio, just search audio AKM fire, and you'll get more information. But it's just something that we should all know about. Go ahead, Mike, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Sorry, my mouse got lost between screens. So I'm going to put up a link in the chat. There's a webcam out there for $30 that I got from my wife and for her work, and some coworkers saw it because they're all running like these really old MacBook Airs, and for $30 it was like a huge upgrade. So I'll put it in the link, in the Discord link.
Great. Next question.
Well, this is from Tony Mobley, but he's specifically asking a question for Dansby, who was here in the panel earlier, but I don't believe is still here, so I'm not sure he can answer it. He was, it's about his voice instruction on Zoom and other streaming platforms, so I'm afraid.
Hopefully Dansby will be back. Well, Tony, ask him again when he comes back there. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Eric Hall of Mount Vernon, Washington. How about taking the office hours YouTube auto captions and build a searchable database for every word said?
We could. I think that the problem is that I tend to be very future driven. So I kind of feel like you're here for the moment, and then I'm on to the next show. If I saw some ROI there, I think I might do it, but I'm not that there's so many things to do to improve office hours that I think that one would be not something I'd probably spend much time on at the moment. And I got to jump out one more time. Bill, go ahead and run with it. Just keep moving through the questions.
We'll keep going. You take care. All right, so we're moving on to the next question. I don't think I saw any hands on that. Sky, was that a
Well, yeah,
flash?
that was just a follow up. And
Okay, go ahead.
in following in Mike Anderson's legacy, we do scrape at least the some parts of the Makana and put them into Discord. So hopefully between Jeff's annotating the YouTube and then that information, we're trying to collate and archive some of the information into at least a possible place of research. So
Okay, Eric Hall wants to jump in on this too. Eric?
Well, I guess if I understood, actually, Discord was the only resource that I could find that was a searchable resource. It didn't have a very robust search as far as I could tell. That's all I'm talking about is finding information and,
well,
and
now you and I
optimizing
have
that.
now you and I have a good reason to have coffee together.
Yes, and you may have just volunteered. Okay, moving on to Eric Hull of Mount Vernon, Washington, who says, when is HDMI out from a separate computer used versus a Zoom share screen? Does anybody want to parse through the best use cases for those two different approaches? Jason, dive in.
Oh boy. The diversity of this question is insane.
Explain the universe in 25 words or less and why.
42. Thank you. All right, let's see. So there are many, many cases to use either one. Simplicity is really going to be what's king here. So if you want playout, if you need to screen scrape, if you need a higher bit rate, then, also if you need to go through a hardware mixer, it's almost always going to be HDMI out dedicated. Also, if you need your audio to be in sync and you are somewhat scared of NDI, then yeah, I can feel Stuart just going, NDI is great. But at the end of the day, long story short, it depends on the complexity of what you're doing and how certain you need to be that it will work. Can we leave it at that?
I guess so. Let's move on to Mickey had his hand up and then Jeffrey Powers. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would say like figure out if you need the resolution. If you need the resolution, next figure out if your account is capable of either 720p or 1080p. If it's not, then go with the screen share. But if it is, then go with HDMI through another machine.
Okay, Jeffrey?
The other thing is ease of use. If you do a screen share and a lot of people have the two screen experiences load up, then the screen share will go full screen. Whereas it'll, if you're in gallery view, you're seeing it in a small box, and then you got to show people how to pin it to the pin it and then unpin it to get back to the gallery view. So that can kind of be a mess if you're just doing a straight scrape to window like I do when I show you the videos. So that might be it. Just easy use might be a good reason why.
Okay, let's do Jeff Francis and then Eric Hall. Go ahead, Jeff.
It could depend on what you are trying to screen share, because when you do a screen share, you get an option of either sharing your entire desktop, which you may not want to do for letting people look into your world, or sharing particular windows out of an application. I know for doing screen shares of Pro Tools is a 2-window system. So it's sometimes easier to just do that from a separate computer and have Pro Tools running on there, and you can drag windows around at will and share those, as opposed to having to turn off your screen share because, I forgot to share that window, and then turn on that screen share again.
Makes a lot of sense. Eric Hall, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just looking at, I thought maybe the resolution playout would be the advantage. And when I wonder about Jeffrey's comment about making it full screen, can't we just spotlight it?
I'm sure you can. I have noticed, and this may be just what I'm operating here, but when people spotlight things, it changes interfaces for other people. It drives me a little crazy because every time somebody does a spotlight, my panel view collapses down to the other, or the gallery view collapses down to the other view, and it just drives me nuts.
Exactly.
Mickey?
Yeah, just on that, that's essentially what Spotlight is. It forces everyone to see a specific person's camera or video source, including other panelists.
Yeah, so when you suddenly get knocked out of gallery view and you're trying to find people raising hands and you're in speaker view and you have to go fix that, it's a little annoying, but what the heck. Okay, I think that's everybody taking care of that one, so let's move on to the next question. I have to go over here and click this button first. And Paul Prusakowski of Gainesville says, what are the best ways to determine appropriate audio delays settings when syncing different microphone sources with video sources? I'm using vMix with multiple camera video only inputs via Magewell cards and audio inputs via Mike's Mixer to Behringer 404 or Scarlett USB audio interface. Boy, we're going to parse through this one. Let's do Stuart first, and then Jason. We'll give you a rest for a second before we dive into your side. Stuart, go ahead. And then Mickey.
Okay, I'm assuming we're using a Magewell card that's HDMI in or SDI in. The first option for Paul would actually be to see if he can route the analog audio out of his mixer to one of the cameras and go in that way, because that will reduce the sync issue hugely. Assuming that he's got one of the cards that doesn't have an audio input on it, which I believe there are some older ones that might be like that, the Behringer or the Scarlett will always be delayed compared to a PCI card getting the video in. So the easy way is to display or put something like a metronome in front of all of the cameras, set it running, and just look for the audio clicking up and down on the camera inputs versus the output of the mixer, and just match those. Just delay the mixer until you get the right audio. An easier display would be something like Smart doing its waterfall display. So you've got a visual output of the different waveforms and where they are. And as you adjust the delay, the waterfall will end up with just one peak rather than multiple peaks.
It's nice having these tools now that let you see audio spikes. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I will leave the best answers to the professionals like Mickey who will come after me, but I will nail 90% of your problems 90% of the time. Whatever you do, please go analog out into a source that is jam synced. I know I'm not using that term perfectly, but you know, USB sound cards absolutely positively under load are going to have some sort of slippage. And that's why do not chase your tail. Do not deal with this, because the moment you start saturating your line, you're going to be chasing this sync back and forth, and it's going to make you crazy. So just get ahead of it. The best way to block a punch is to not be there. And in this case, the way to block this punch is to get into one of your cameras and be delighted by that.
We're going to go to Mickey and then Jeff Francis. But I will say that audio is always the hardest thing for everybody coming to these arts first. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, there are professional tools. Alex talks about the Hitomi Matchbox a lot, and essentially feed it an audio source and the video source. You play a specific I think the term they use is a blip through it, and then it gives you a millisecond reading on how much delay you need to dial in. A relatively cheaper way of doing things would be to record your audio and video sources coming out of your entire chain, and bring that recording into an NLE like Premiere or whatever you use, and count how many frames the offset is, and then do the math in terms of changing that frame count to a millisecond count, because that depends on your frame rate. And if you're using a digital console, a digital mixer, you could usually dial in the delay there.
Jeff Francis.
Mickey's got it. You just need to with your setup, do an audio video recording, make a sharp noise, put it in a video editor, and measure the amount of delay. That's how you determine the appropriate delay.
Okay, so I think we've talked through this one a good little bit. Let's move on to Michael J's question from New York City. Hi, Alex. I have a chance to get another Mac Mini i5 4GB RAM, 500 megabytes for $200. I have a 2018 i7. Would it be useful as a streaming rig with ATEM jobs or Zoom? Jason?
So he neglected to mention the most important part here, which is the year of the Mac Mini. At the end of the day, I would say ostensibly probably not. If it's a Mac Mini that is 2018, and here's why. In my experience, a stream rig does not mean the same thing to me as it does to you, as it does to, my grandma. They're just not the same thing. At the end of the day, if you're going to try to do stuff like run OBS on Mac, you're going to need an eGPU. You are going to be taxing it. 4 gigs of RAM isn't enough for, in my opinion, a normal desktop environment, let alone a streaming rig. Also, Intel SoCs for graphics, not so great.
Yeah, we get this conundrum a lot. Somebody will come on the boards and say, "Can I use my MacBook Air to stream?" And it's like, well, what are you going to stream? If you're just streaming 640 by 480 video out, sure, absolutely. If you're trying to do 8K professional work, probably not.
Well, and also
Alex
it's hi everybody. Glad to be back with you. Sorry about that. We had a little login issue. The key with Zoom is to never trust the app. Like you never use the app. Like people always like, I can't join from an app with a thing, and I'm like, don't ever do that. Like you just go into the web and you log into the web and then you go through the thing. I find that the one problem with Zoom in general is that they keep on trying to bring you back to the app, but none of us that do this all the time trust it. So anyway, to get back to streaming, the main thing is that as Eric has proven here, is that it doesn't take very much to get. Eric Hall is coming to us with a Raspberry Pi. Like you can actually get, you can do a basic video with many different pieces of hardware. It's what you asked it beyond the encoding and the quality of the encoding that you expect. So the problem that we always had with Wirecast, and we would always only have it streaming generally, was that, if you put the headphone jack into the Mac, you drop frames. like it was literally that sensitive to the process. Now that was 10 years ago, but the point is that you the lower the power, the more likelihood that you're going to have things, and I just wouldn't ask an older or smaller machine to do anything other than encode, and once you get to that, there's lots of machines that will do that. And I know that we're running to the top of the hour. We're going to run a little heavy, just because we've got a lot of questions that are stacked up. So anyway, and we spent a lot of time on 5G for whatever reason, almost as much time as Apple did on our keynote. I apologize for that.
Sorry.
Anyway, go ahead, Jeffrey and Stuart, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Just so you know, I have an overhead camera that I use. I don't use a Mac Mini, but I use an Intel Nook, which is pretty comparable. And it's also i5. It's also a little bit older. I'd say about 2011, 2012. It's I would increase the RAM on your Mac Mini for the best option to stream out, and to make sure it's updated all the way. You can also, and I know some people will cringe when I say this, you can also put Windows onto the Mac Mini and use it that way, and you might have a little bit better functionality on that, and be able to go back and forth. But I believe as long as the video card, that's the big question, is what's that video card inside that version of that Mac Mini? And if it's a good video card, even if it's Intel's internal graphics, then it might be something that you can use, but we need to know that information.
Go ahead, Stuart, real quick, and then we'll move on.
I had to look up the specs of Mac Minis because I noticed Michael's typed late 2012 in the chat. Which would be the same as I'm using for raw video capture. The graphics card in that is the Intel one. There's like about 8 different versions of the Mac Mini for that year, and most of them are very lightweight machines. They would do Zoom okay, but for any sort of professional streaming, no.
Can we agree that absolutely not on OBS, like at all?
Yeah, well, look, I've got the top range one, and it barely runs OBS, but it's really good for capturing RAW for me.
Next question.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Next question.
Okay, we're moving on. A. Mitchell's is in, as Tuesday, November 10th will be another Red Alert Day to raise awareness for the production and live event industries. Is anyone here involved in lighting up their buildings red? Are there more events in your area or a need for volunteers or equipment? I didn't know about this, so I'm going to listen carefully.
I've never heard of this at all. This is cool.
We're virtual event. This is a group of virtual event folks. I mean, for the most part, so we're a
I
little
could
less.
turn my background red. Does that help? Like,
Yeah. Go ahead, John. John Preto.
So Jan Landy has a group on Wednesdays, and they're part of this group. One of the guys in his group, all professional audio guys, is like the regional guy setting all this stuff up. So you can hit Jan. I think he's in Discord as well.
Go ahead, Stuart.
For lighting up buildings, if anyone wants to have a look at something artistic, look up White Night in Melbourne, and you will see the entire city being used as backdrops for lighting displays from projectors and LED rigs. It is absolutely fabulous.
Absolutely. Sky.
Yes, we had a big event here as well in the Seattle area, and it was all of theatrical people and live event people as well. And big giant cases were rolled out in front of many of the downtown theaters to bring attention to that there's an entire people group unemployed right now and would love to be employed and working. All dressed in black, by the way, all dressed in theater black.
I know I'm just going to probably say a hard brick that people aren't going to enjoy, that what people should be doing is retraining. It's not coming back. Like it's not coming back. Like it's not coming back. It's never going to come back to the level it was before. We're talking to companies that are just seeing the ROI shift. The event groups inside these companies are starting to see that they can reach more people more effectively without building the physical events. This isn't going to change over the next 6 to 12 months. And once people really figure it out and events start to work, like the events that we're pitching for next year, you could never do physically. And that's what's happening is people are now starting to get out of their little box. And once they get out of that box and they start going down that path, it's over, the cat is out of the bag. And so we can keep on trying to do that, but we just need to get that, like, you can try to hang on to the past or you can move on to the future. But, I just don't see how we're going to ever have the level of work that was there before, because it was crazy before. It was like doing what we were doing was nuts, because I can tell you right now that especially some of the environmental groups we've worked with in the past, they're targeting your events. Like they're going to make every large corporation publish carbon footprints for every event, and buy credits, so it's going to make the events millions of dollars more. Like a Dreamforce will cost millions to do that way. And so because now that they have the full stop, they're going to try to keep it from starting back up again. So you just have to get we need to really rethink what we're doing, and there's an incredible opportunity right now for people who are doing virtual events. I mean, I haven't had a day off since March, it's busy, and so it is, there's a huge opportunity for that. And what I would do is, you can be ready to go back to physical if I'm wrong, but man, I would be spending 10 hours a day figuring out how to do virtual events for people. I would do them for free if I had to. I would do whatever I can. I would get in there and dig in, figure out, get comfortable, figure out how to do it for the local groups and learn how it works. But don't wait for the physical event to come back, because I could be wrong, but it doesn't look it looks pretty dim. That it's going to come back in big events like that, what we've seen before. Little events, 50, 100 people, sure. But events of tens of thousands, that's going to take a long time to come back, and people are figuring out how to do it without it. And so you just have to really get your head around that. Go ahead, George, and then we'll move on.
To Alex's point, for the past couple of weeks, I've been going and doing these hybrid demos for one of my convention center clients. So it's really, it's painful to watch, trying to mix Zoom with local events. And I understand it, because you're talking about convention centers. The DC area alone has maybe 4 or 5 big convention centers. And the thought of them going under it's scary, but they're just not going to be able to do these hybrid events. I don't see where we are right now with virtuals. That's the direction that we're going. I don't even see hybrid being really formative in small areas, but not for huge conventions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
So awareness of the industry, but maybe the awareness is things are moving on fast. David Keating. David from Kettering, UK says, I only have hearing in one ear and I can't discern the difference between mono and stereo. How much would this limit me in working in the live event streaming production field?
Go ahead, Jason.
For the most part, it shouldn't, unless you want to be A1.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to. I mean, for the most part, most of our world is mono. I mean, I don't know if I do audio. Yeah, Mickey and then Sky.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. Like, if it would be difficult to be a mixer, especially if you're mixing in a format that's higher than mono. But like, say if you're a producer or a director, like if you just need to listen to content or communications, then it shouldn't hinder you. I don't think so.
Go ahead, Sky.
I had a brain tumor. I lost a lot of hearing in my left ear, but video production is my world, and so yes, I do miss the good stereo, but I'm still feeling the Atmos experience. And the crazy part is, my son was born in the Kettering Hospital. The connections continue. It's crazy.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I think you might be able to flip and combine sources onto one channel, one listening channel, and maybe just use some additional meters and things like that just to confirm that you're getting in. But it would be risky to listen to anything other than mono in a live situation.
I mean, the big thing, this gets back into, we've talked about scopes a couple of times, is that really understanding how to measure things and how to look at things. Obviously, you can get around a lot of these things, but you just have to know what you're looking at. So you will have to be, if with only one ear, you have to be much more technical, than someone else. You can't just listen for it, and you could theoretically be better at it. I actually can. I am red-green colorblind to some degree. It's not like completely. But as a result, I don't trust those. And so as a result, I do a lot of things in black and white with different channels to check things, to check my work. And I actually can match things better than a lot of people, because I'm not depending on just my eyes. I'm depending on a whole bunch of measurements and so on and so forth to look at it. And so Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to, of course you don't want a blind colorist, but at the end of the day,
and I don't take on color. Like I'm definitely never a colorist.
That's my point, is this is, when it comes down to live events, this is science. This isn't art. That's it.
Yep. Next question.
James in Dublin is here with, did everyone read Alex's email? I was hoping to find an Easter egg at the end of the email. I didn't find one. Did anyone else?
So the reason I put that in there was because what we realized over the last couple of days was that people were just clicking on the top part and not realizing that there's anything below it. And I've been putting in somewhat inconsistently what's happening each day into those lower areas. And so what I wanted to make sure of is that people understood that, hey, there's actual information below. This is a real bummer about the email system within Zoom, is that if they just let us move the body around, so that we could say, hey, I want my announcements to go before the link, it'd be hugely useful. And so what I put in the email was just to make sure that people knew. But it's a good idea to put Easter eggs in. I'll think about that. Like, maybe we'll put some fun things in there that people can give people a reason to read down further. Anyway, next question.
Tony Mobley, often on the panel, says, trying to do spotlighting in a Zoom meeting for a small church. I've been unsuccessful in getting the spotlighting to work. Is it a webinar feature only?
Go ahead, Sky.
Make sure to only do not use dual screen, and it's possible. And you can do the spotlighting, and then it'll stream out to YouTube. I do it every week. But make sure
the dual
it's only
screen
on...
is just more confusing. It's not that you can use dual screen, but it is what you get, and what you see is a little bit, you just have to know what you're looking at there. But yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I mean, I use dual screen all the time for office hours. It's just you have to keep in mind that what you need to look at is the main Zoom window and not your second screen window. The main Zoom window is what other people see. In terms of spotlighting, keep in mind that actually Zoom has a detailed article on it, but keep in mind that you need to have at least 3 people in the meeting for spotlighting to work. And in case you are using a webinar, there are settings in the participants window at the bottom wherein you can select what the attendees see. It's either follow host view, which I'm on, always stick to active speaker, or always stick to gallery view.
Go ahead, Hosmuk, and then Tony.
Yeah, just for the attendees, main windows where you can control all the Zoom, like your mute and your stop video and everything else. The other window will not have that.
And Tony, real quick.
Okay, so my other question is, there are times when there are only 2 or 3 people that are actually on camera, but there might be 10 people in there. So does it matter if it's only 2 people on camera as far as the spotlighting? Because what's happening is, if someone has their mic on or not muted, they are the phone symbol is showing up, which is a problem for the Zoom.
Go ahead, Jason and Hosmuk.
I'll yield to Hosmuk. He was first.
No, I don't know what the number is, but if it's one-on-one, the spotlight feature won't come up. You have to have at least 3 attendees, I think.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to say there's some
go
little
ahead.
tricks where you can mute everyone and make certain people co-hosts so that only the co-hosts in the meeting can unmute themselves. Also, as far as spotlighting, I think you can spotlight up to 9 people in Zoom, at least in a regular Zoom meeting. But the thing to keep in mind is on different devices that may display differently. Like if someone's watching through mobile, they may not see all of those additional spotlights there.
Jason, and then we'll move on.
Also, if the issue is the phone thing is an eyesore, you can enforce this in the Zoom meeting, but a lot of people might just be afraid of Zoom, not knowing that you can fully do it on a smartphone as long as you're isolating your hearing and your microphone. Another thing is, if they create an account, they can put a still of them up, and that, it's not the same as video, but it's a heck of a lot better than a generic phone icon. So if it's the eyesore you're after getting rid of, reach out to them, and I bet you'll have a favorable to what you have response.
And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into speed round, so be very concise. We're just going to try to close these off, and then we'll go to the cooking section. So go ahead, Bill. Go ahead and ask those questions.
A. Mitchell's in Washington. Is there any chance of running the special event today with a pipe of the event into the Zoom instead of it just being second ear? It isn't possible to do this sort of thing in many mobile devices, and it doesn't always make great radio, even with the full day of chat to read.
So we're specifically not doing that on purpose. The idea is that it's a second ear experience. There's a couple reasons for it. Number one is that it violates the terms of service of what these systems work on. So, if we ever wanted to stream that or whatever, it's not something that these companies appreciate. Secondly, it is the design is to allow the user to decide what they want to listen to, so they can turn it up or down. It's really designed to work. You watched it on your laptop or on your thing, but we won't. The structure of how we cover these will never include the audio of the event. It's designed as a second ear experience, and that's just the way we're going to go down that path, because I've done decades of doing it the other way, and I find that it's hard for us because we can't talk over a lot of things. In this case, we're going to talk over all of it. So we're going to, we're going to be talking constantly. We're not worried about whether we're interrupting anything, because you can just not listen to it. Or it's just like your friend sitting there talking to you next to you while you're watching it. But it really is designed as a 2-screen experience, and we probably won't change that. Next question.
Eric Hall of Mount Vernon, Washington says, why are all consumer internet connections asynchronous?
Go ahead, Jason. And then John.
Money. It's that simple. It's much more expensive to talk to the whole world than to have the whole world talk to you. That's it.
Go ahead, John.
I knew Jason was going to answer this question. The other one of the reasons why they set it up asynchronously is they didn't want you running web servers from your house.
Yeah, that's web service from the house is a big one. Mickey?
Yeah, I think, it might vary from region to region and provider to provider, because I think here, at least with fiber connections to the home, they're all what's the term? The same speed up and down.
Synchronous.
Synchronous, yeah.
Jeff?
Is he asking asynchronous or asymmetrical?
I think
you're answering symmetrical.
I think it's asymmetrical. Sorry, we answered.
Oh yeah, asymmetrical. Sorry.
Asymmetrical.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuart, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, he's answering asymmetrical, but they're actually sold as asynchronous, and it's stupid. And like for Mickey here in Australia, you can pay extra and have the same rate going both directions, but it is a lot.
Next question.
Bob from Woodside says, can Alex comment further on avoiding the Zoom app for best performance?
What I meant by that specifically was that there's these rat holes that you can get into when you try to log into an event directly in Zoom, when I was talking about it earlier. So there's two things that I'll answer on that question. One is that you just have to make sure that you're logged into the web page. When you join something that's requiring a login, don't try to do it directly in the app. It's a disaster. Like it gets into some kind of cycle that doesn't work. And so if you ever get it, like this event, you have to log in. You have to be logged into Zoom. Do that in the web, not in the app. The app is like, the chances of it working in the app are very low. It's just not a very good experience. As far as performance goes, like I think we were talking about, we're probably going to move most of our major events away from webinar, mostly because of the resolution limitations that Zoom has for the attendees. So we're going to start streaming them all to Mukana. And then have the Q&A and everything else there. So we got to put a front end on it, which is what we're doing now. But it's just not, Zoom hasn't caught up fast enough with the webinar platform. And the 640 by 360 we've just decided is intolerable. So we're, and it's not just us. I mean, we can try to get our 1080p up, but the problem we really have is all our clients. They can't do that. And so either we have to provide all of the webinars for our clients, which we may do, or we need to move off the webinar platform to do that. It's just not, they're not keeping up. With what our clients want. Zoom has to, I know Zoom's under a lot of pressure, so I understand that, but they're falling behind in that one area. And it's just going to mean that we're going to be recommending to our clients that they move to a live streaming platform of some kind, as opposed to, because we can get 1080p from Zoom, from the individual connections from the rooms, but we can't get it to the attendees. And that's the part that's problematic for us. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, quick +1 to the asynchronous thing. At the end of the day, bandwidth is not an artificially scarce resource, and it really annoys me that ISPs pretend that it is.
Okay, we'll go non-synchronous. Talk about asynchronous. All right, next question.
I'm going to do this last one, but then I got to sneak out, Alex, because I've got that live shoot today in about an hour and a half. This one is from John Preto of Las Vegas. And the panel, Alex, it would be very interesting to see Eric Hall's CPU usage during this Zoom session. Can he check it quickly? Thank you.
Are you able to check that?
Well, I just want to be clear that it's only performing a capture function. It's not running my entire interaction with y'all.
Can you run top on Raspberry Pi, Jason?
Yeah, I can run top. I can run top for you. I can do it right now.
Hey, Guy, are you able to take over the Q&A?
Sure, I can do that.
So I think we have only a couple left here. I think there was one here that said, what is the difference between sub-6 and millimeter? There was a city near me discussing how they have a way of covering. We talked, Jason, really quickly, we'll answer that question.
Millimeter, different frequencies. That's it. Higher speed, and anytime you have a different frequency, you have different physical characteristics. That's it.
And Eric, you said you're working on it with a $30 webcam. There you go. That's great. So now we're going to move on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about cooking. Go ahead, Courtney. Whoop, Courtney disappeared. So we're going to talk a little bit about cooking.
36%.
Oh, okay. There you go. So the reason that I'm talking about cooking, and if you have questions about this as we start to talk about it, is because we've got a couple people in the group. Sky and Hosmuk are both working on cooking streaming and we're working through that. And so I wanted to dump what I know about it. I'm by no means an expert, but I want to talk through what those things are, of the things that we found. We've done a bunch of live streams that are related to cooking. I'll show you a couple photos, and then we'll kind of go into it as far as answering questions about it. But again, one of the things that I'm constantly trying to look for this group is how do we not throw the ball where the industry is? Like, again, we get back into this. Everyone's trying to figure out how to, in my opinion, go into the past, which is how do we get events to work You know, and what I'm looking at is how do we prep ourselves and how do we go out and sell ideas that could really work. I think that there's a huge opportunity in the area of cooking when it comes to live streaming and content. And the reason that I see that, I just want to underline why I'm talking about this crazy subject, is because there is a lot of people cooking. My wife did not cook much at home. I cook a lot. You know, I'd pick meals and I do it. And until COVID, my wife just had very simple meals that she would build. She didn't want to be bothered with it. She'd go out and she'd get pizzas and bring home, you know, pre-done chickens and all kinds of, and I was the crazy one that wanted to have some recipe that I was working on. That's completely changed. She's now making different meals all the time. She's excited about it. She's, you know, she doesn't have me cut all her vegetables anymore. She just won't let me. She's like, I can do that because I'm really fast. You know, like I know you think it's crazy, but everything to me is, practice, you know, like practice and technique. So I watch videos on how to cut something and then I practice. And I want to cut things all the time. She wants to do it. So the point is that there's a lot of people that are interested in that and they're all trying to figure it out. And I don't see a lot of people really taking advantage of that opportunity and I think that we have to figure out how to make it more of a community thing. And that's what we had the opportunity to do is interactive events. It's not just watching a video on how to do it. It is being able to talk to a chef and having that conversation, using Q&A and so on and so forth. It's not just the recipe, but it's understanding the context of the recipe and why to do the recipe and why I told you to cut the cardamom this way and why we told you to cook it this way, and having a conversation so that someone's learning how to fish as opposed to just getting the fish. And so I think that the market opportunities, for instance, and the one I've talked about in the past, is that eventually companies like Amazon are going to realize how to make this work, which is I can, you know, I'm just going to put this spark in everybody's ear, is that you can get this, you know, what Amazon should be doing is saying, we're going to have a thing with, Thomas Keller or some big chef. You can order it from Whole Foods. You know, you can just tell, you can tell Alexa to order it from Whole Foods. And then and they'll send you the pre-packed, like a pre-packed thing that is designed for that live stream, you know, and then you have people talking about it and trading notes and making it, and then getting to talk to that chef about how they're doing what they're doing. And those kinds of things could be replicated in a lot of ways, but that's real money. Like if you're looking at budget for something, if you're going to sell thousands of these things because you're doing a live stream, that pays for the live stream. You know, it doesn't have to be people paying paying a subscription to do it, but they might do that as well. So there's a lot of people that, like, everybody wants to be good at stuff, you know, and cooking is something that many of us, especially now in COVID, are having to do 3 times a day, you know, and so it's, you know, at least a couple times a day. And so the thing is that giving them that opportunity to interact and learn is the key. Now, the problem is that it does take a little bit of infrastructure, but that infrastructure has never been easier to get than it is now. And I'm going to show you a couple images of some of the stuff we've done in the past, which is bigger than what you need to do this. But I want to kind of talk through that. Go ahead, Jeffrey, while I'm pulling that up.
Because I have to go. I just want to say that this is something that I'm very interested in, not just for cooking, because this can really be drop and replace to other things.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm setting up my drum set for this type of thing. But I will show you, and Alex, you'll appreciate this. I did have my Heston cue ready for the cooking show.
The Heston system, I have the Heston system as well, and the Heston system is one of the coolest. We'll digress for 1 minute. Is one of the coolest things that's out there. So it's a pan that tells its temperature back to your phone. The phone talks to the burner, which is inductant. And so what that cycle means that the phone, when you tell your phone you want the pan to be 183 degrees, it'll get it to that temperature in record speed and then keep it there. And it creates this kind of precision connection between what you're doing and it's really cool. And anyway, so it reduces a variable for a lot of people, which is that you get precise temperature and it stays there. So like when you throw something cold into a pan, it cools the pan down and then it has to come back up. Well, the Heston knows exactly how to do that. It's not like how long do you keep the burner on, it just brings it right back up to that temperature again. So it then stops. And so the other side of it is that Heston has included with it incredible tutorials. So you go and adventure. It's an adventure because they have all these tutorials that are video tutorials. It gets back to what we were talking about. They're video tutorials. Every step has a video. So it's not like it's just a list. It's like every step has a well-shot video of how to do it. Now, the only thing that Heston's missing, and I'm going to be talking to them some more about it, because the only thing they're missing is live streams, and they're in Vallejo, so they're not very far. They're about 15 minutes from my house or 20 minutes from my house, and so I've been pondering that possibility as far as what that would look like. But again, I think that this model of doing this could be big, and to the same point that Jeffrey had it, you can rinse and repeat. This could be metalsmithing. This could be, all kinds of crafts. It's just that cooking is something that everybody's doing. So it's something that's very wide range, and we can get into it. But I do think that there's also possibilities of interaction between chefs. So, and as we, as a group, build up a capacity around the world to do it, we could possibly create the new event that doesn't exist yet. So that's kind of what I'm interested in talking about there, is that, for instance, I think that there's a possibility that we're going to see Sky and Hosmuk do one eventually together, right? 2 multicams with 2 different chefs in 2 different parts of the world. Right now, what happens is that one chef has no tools. They've got a webcam and maybe they've got audio, or they're using their phone, and then you have a multicam on your end. But what's possible coming up is that we could all have multicams on our end. If a bunch of us had the tools and we all knew who had tools, like, okay, we're going to do something in the Philippines, and now Mickey, might have a kit, and we know how to tie this back and forth to what Sky's doing, or Alex is going to do, something out of London, or, the point is that, or we could do all of them. And we, as a group, could figure out how to do all of that. So the key is for us to figure it out and learn it and teach each other, and then possibly have, start to build it. But we could do something here as a group that is no one's really thinking about. Yeah, go ahead, Sky, real quick.
Well, you planted that seed months back, and I have been in such joy working with Madeline, who has a brilliant attitude, but is also a trainer. She's done corporate events. And so she's not just a chef for her own self because she loves food. She has participated in encouraging others to try and experiment. And she's also an entertainer, as you pointed out. So I just need to let you know, her husband said yes.
Yep.
I'm going over today to start measuring. We're going to blow up their kitchen. We're going to turn it into a studio. We're going to turn the dining room into a control room. So your seed is being nurtured and planting. So
we'll keep on, and that's the goal.
And practice. But he said not just yes to blowing it up. He said yes for us to make this a real thing. So you have a test kitchen at your disposal. Let's blow it up.
Well, and that's the whole thing, is that all of us want, and I'm hoping that this little session gets people excited about thinking about it and start to play with it. And I don't think it has to be hard either. I mean, one of the things I want to do is try to get a hold of a couple more huddle cams to test like the idea, like, could we just do 3 huddle cams, into a MacBook or something like that, and have it be a multi-camera setup, and could we, those are the kind of things that, like, what is the lowest,
we did the experience with Pixel cams, and I can show you an experience of what we did. 2 chefs, and one had Pixel cams, and we had the big full kit.
But we have to figure out what that minimum is and how that works. Anyway, so let me show you a couple of behind the scenes. This was done for MasterChef. So this was a mixture of Google Hangouts and MasterChef. So what you can see here, again, and this is heavier than what you need. All of these are going to be heavier than what you need to start with, but I want to show you what we did in this process. So we've got a teleprompter over here. We have, the lighting, is always as close to the, what we want to do as possible, so that we can really, get good, strong lighting here. We do a lot of T-bars like this. So, doing T's over our islands is a really easy way to hang a bunch of stuff over top of it. So, so it's a pretty common thing for us to do, is to put and you'll see that it's a square T across the top. And the advantage of that, of course, is that the light doesn't slide around. It stays structured. So, but those, these T's over top of what we're doing, especially if we're in a location that we can't hang something from the ceiling, this is what we have here. So we have a teleprompter. That's where the person's going to look if they're doing an interaction over Zoom, or if they want to talk to the audience, or they want to have things that they want to show. Then this is our close-up camera here that we're using, and then you'll see a couple cameras that are kind of affixed over top, or not. That's a light, but there's a camera here, and I'll show a couple more photos here. Let's see here. Here's kind of this is a pano from the inside of so you'll see a couple of these close-up cameras. These were little, Canon, I think they were AX100s or whatever, but these were our little overhead cameras that we shot. And a lot of this came down to kind of rehearsing what she's going to do, and then, rehearsing what the cook's going to do and figure out where you need cameras. So it was less about a generalized set and more about what do we need in this environment. Here's just another shot. You can see that camera more clearly. Here's the, from the pan, you can see now we realized we need another monitor so that when Chrissy was from the Master Chef. When she's over there, she can still look. That was going to be another camera that she can kind of look at. So anyway, so that's kind of the overall setup that we had. And as you back it up here, here's our C-stand. Here's our teleprompter. We use larger teleprompters for when we're doing human interaction, because you can see the person better. We use smaller teleprompters when we're using text. So this is a 24-inch, teleprompter. And I'll get through these images, and then we'll go back to Q&A. This is in Williams-Sonoma. This is a slightly bigger setup. So you can see these are BRC 900s. These are PTZs. So we had kind of grown to PTZs at that point. And so these are the advantage of the PTZs, of course, is that we can pre-program the locations. We can pan and tilt them. And again, we built this is just a giant T that went all along the entire length of the thing. So you'll see this. We built this T with junior stands and ran a T all the way across. So that we could just drop lights and everything else, into that under the hood, so to speak. Actually, that's actually what it was. And then here are our hair lights and backlights. Here were these light panels. You can see there's one shot where they put something into the oven, or two shots that were there. So out of an hour, there was 2 minutes or not 2 minutes. There was 10 seconds that we needed that camera, but it was, it added something to it. And again, a lot of this could be done with webcams that are there, but this is kind of you can see Thomas Keller kind of prepping all the different bits and pieces of what he's doing there. So those are that's kind of a quick overview of what that, those are some examples of some of the stuff we've done. And again, all of those are a little heavy compared to what you need to do to start. And I'm going to be working on smaller versions of that. Again, all webcams, as a test. I do think that there's some interesting possibilities. So we're going to experiment a lot more with this in the fall, because I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't taken off. Like, I kind of feel like that we're not seeing live streaming all the time doing this, and not just this, but crafts. And when we go back to this, it's not just this, but we should be doing more of these things. But cooking is an easy one because it's such a large target. There's so many people that want to learn how to, right now, want to learn how to cook and want to learn how to do what they do better. Jason, and then Alex, and then Sky.
Conceptually, just from a high level, I love this. I absolutely love this. It's really neat. It is insanely practical, and it captures the zeitgeist of the COVID era. My immediate thought is, aside from the ceiling limitations, well, maybe I'm answering my own question, but snow globes, maybe for lighting to simplify.
Oh, or China balls. You can definitely simplify with some China balls, and some really powerful CFLs will go a long way. So your color on the CFLs is a little green, so you have to kind of always keep that in mind. But you can filter that out and make it work, and we've definitely used those. So China balls can, and you can get a lot of other kinds of lights to put into them. But from a cheap perspective, at $100 a light, you can definitely get a lot of soft light that will work, for what you're doing. Alex?
So just to let you know, one evening last week, my girlfriend was involved in a influencer streaming thing. So essentially what it was the rice company sponsored this event and put it together. And it was made up of, one of the people attending was the guy from the rice company. But he did all the shopping and arranged all the deliveries of all the ingredients in advance, including more ingredients than just their stuff. It was just other stuff like a 3 liter, a few gallons of milk and all that kind of stuff. And it was a 2 hours and 40-minute session. and it was done all in 6 or 7 people were there. My girlfriend's got 1,000 Instagram followers, so she's probably one of the smaller influencers there, obviously. And essentially, she felt very happy that the chef at the Italian embassy in London was going to teach her an Italian tips of how her Italian cuisine was being done in London. In other words, Italian cuisine that was given to ambassadors and stuff like that. And it was just locked off camera, and the guy, it was mainly effectively kind of a radio show, and he was kind of answering questions from various people as he was going along. And one other point, kitchens in other parts of the world are smaller than American kitchens. It's just the structure of our apartments and our homes and stuff like that. So you're going to have to fit into, I mean, some people have islands, but some people just have, they don't have anything in the center of a room at all. And they just actually have enough space just to turn around and face the wall and stuff like that. So it's going to be quite tricky. So you may have to be a little bit more on the close-up side of things. And
the other thing to remember, if you're going to do a live stream, you can buy islands and put them anywhere, you know, and give them a little burner. And, you know, we've definitely done ones that I don't have pictures of that were in a studio where we just brought in an island, and you brought in an island, we put up some stuff, and you can make it look nice. And, you know, unless you have the right kitchen at home, don't try. You know, like it's not, you know, like it's just, it just becomes this mess. You know, you can do little things with it. And I wouldn't say don't try. Just know that it'll be very limited, and it's very difficult to do it. And
to that point,
I'll send you pictures of your London cooking bureau in a minute, and then you'll see what you can get from my apartment.
Okay, Alex Goldner. Now, to that point, Tiny Kitchen Big Taste is our partner, and so he's a gentleman that lives in a 700 square foot studio apartment, and he's been doing a YouTube show for almost 3 years now. So I will show you an example of what pixels can do in I mean, again, it's TV, right? It's 2-dimensional. You can make magic happen from depth because you know what you're doing. But to the other point, to John's, Pareto's point of bringing in entertainment, over the weekend, a friend of mine talked about going into a charity event, cooking with a chef, and then having music brought in throughout the whole evening. So it's a premium event of like an hour of thing. The other thing I want to ask eventually is, at what price point are we discussing? Is there a Whole Foods level? And I said there's also Walmart is perfectly happy to send you things as well. And that was a conversation with our Tiny Kitchen chef, Michael Fucci. But somebody else's pushback was, yeah, but people that shop at Walmart aren't interested in doing anything other than microwave. Interesting thought.
But the thing is that it doesn't matter whether people at Walmart want to just use a microwave. That's not the market. The market is people who care about doing this. I mean, you look at the number of views for the guy that wrote, I can't think of his name right now, but he wrote the earth or flour, water, salt, yeast or whatever. He wrote a book on that, and his YouTube, you know, stuff, 150,000 people watching, you know, so, I mean, that have watched these videos. And so the point is that it's just a giant market, and all you need is a very small subset of that market to be successful. Because that market is so big, it's 7 billion people having to make, 7 billion people have to make food 3 times a day, or hopefully three times a day, at least once a day, right? And of those, you need 1,000 or 2,000 to be successful. And so it's just that it's a very, very, very wide market to take advantage of. You don't worry about the people who don't want to do it. There are definitely people out there that do. And that's that want to learn these things, that, foodies, there's a lot of foodies out there that want to learn it, or just people who want to have better lunches for their kids, or they just want to have a better, my wife just wants to have better dinners, and, now that she's stuck with that. And I think that there's a huge momentum towards people doing this at home. Go ahead, Hasmukh. And I apologize. I'm going to step away for just a second. I just got a little bit of another one of these emergencies with my little show. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Maybe I can just explain why we got involved in live streaming the cooking. My wife wrote the first book, which was Conscious Cuisine. It was really targeted at fusion of more targeted at, shall I say, the Western kind of cuisine, and the art of including spices. So the book is heavily concentrated on the properties of spices and how spices can be leveraged in your cooking and she covers a lot of health stuff. Then she got the itch to write a second book. And the second book was really about my granny's pantry. And our home cooking is what we call Gujarati cuisine. You get North Indian and you get South Indian, and then you get the state of Gujarat. So we have Gujarati cuisine. And her thinking was that in South Africa, we've preserved a lot of the Indian culture, although we were all born here, raised here. We've been here for 100 years. But she was getting worried that folks like my daughter-in-laws were losing the art of Indian Gujarati cuisine. And that cuisine is not captured in any sort of detail in recipes. Everything is, 2 teaspoons of this and a handful of this, and they just throw things into the pot. And that's really how they do cooking. So the idea was for her second book was to measure everything, write the second recipe book, and then have that as a legacy for our children and the next generations. But then with the COVID, we thought, why write a book? Why not live stream the actual meals themselves? So right now she's busy with a mixture of meals from her fusion cooking, but she's really very keen on the Gujarati cuisine. So that's what we are doing right now.
Well,
so
and Hasmukh,
yeah.
why I'm very interested in partnering with you is because of the nutritional value. Because while Madeline is very big on the traditional escoffier dishes of the rich butters and salts and sugars and fats, it's a demise to our human structure. Too much of any of that, and Graham Kerr talks about food being sensual, and it's actually what tastes good from the neck up and won't kill you from the neck down.
Yeah. Well,
and so that's why I'm very interested in engaging this conversation for community purposes.
There's a growing opinion that I have to admit that I'm part of. I'm mostly trying to persuade my wife to go along with it. Is I'm trying to move to single ingredient shopping and cooking, which is that basically if there's more than one ingredient in the bag of what I'm buying, I won't I don't want to eat it. Like I just want to cook everything. I want to start everything from a single ingredient and put it all together. And I don't want anything prepackaged. I don't want it because I don't trust it anymore. Like I don't trust our food system anymore, And so like what they're, in the same way of 5G, I've turned very dark, about, how our system is managed. And so I'm trying to buy everything from local. I was buying almost everything, like 60-70% of our stuff from farmers markets and local, farmers and everything else, mostly from a trust issue. It's not like a buy local thing for me. It's just like, I just don't trust the food. I don't trust the food coming from almost anywhere now, and I don't want my kids eating that. And so I think that that's also driving, this kind of people being interested in cooking, because the only way you can really control what you're eating is to cook it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, well, one of the big advantages of what we are doing here when compared to traditional broadcast is that we can add interaction to our shows. And with what Hasmukh's doing, he's essentially been setting up meetings, bringing in friends and family, and people chime in and talk to his wife, the host, and ask questions. What are the panel's ideas, and like what else can we do? Can Hasmukh do? Can Sky do in terms of bringing the level up in terms of interaction?
Yep. Go ahead, Hasmukh.
If I can, I'd like to screen share and just show you my setup, if that's okay, Alex.
Yeah. Who has the? I don't think I'm. Oh yeah. Go ahead. Mickey's got you set up.
Here we go. So I don't know if you guys can see that.
We can,
Can you
yeah.
see?
Yeah.
You can, yeah. So this is the setup in the kitchen.
Maybe go full screen on it, Hasmuk.
Yeah, I'll do that. Is that cool? Can you see that now? So it's not as conservative as Alex wanted for a beginner. So you can see I've got a ring light there and two lights this side. But the important thing is I mounted a camera clamp on the ceiling, and the huddle cam is sitting here. So the huddle cam basically is focused on the top of the kitchen. Then I'm using the iPhone 11 Pro to focus on the talent. And then I have a Nikon camera on the side to look at the side of this top again. And that's me with the host computer with a MacBook Pro. And that's the ATEM there. And yeah, and so you can see all the HDMI cables going through this, hidden away from the camera and into the ATEM. And the mix pre is just behind this. So without office hours, I would probably do it very, very differently. So yeah, thanks, Mickey.
If you like, I could bring up, I took some panorama of mine so I could
Yep.
set mine up.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, I will get that out. Let me get that set up.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
To Mickey's question, how to add some interactivity, my thought would immediately be, choose a panelist, from a group of people who have a kit and, make a shopping list and, either ship out the ingredients, which of course is impractical, or just, be dead sure that it's exactly the same. I'm being reminded of, your classic cooking show where you have the host whose job it is to talk, and they are teaching, it being taught by an expert. So take that, add Zoom, and, do it remotely. And, again, just switch back and forth. It does not have to be beautiful on the hosts or on the guests' end. But the idea is people like watching other people do things. There's this kind of verisimilitude to see that's a normal person.
Go ahead, Sky.
Can I share screen? Can
Yep,
I share
you should
screen?
be able to.
Okay. Host only panelist. Oop, nope. And here it comes, and sharing. So you'll see it's a galley kitchen. We have a movable table here, which we've actually pushed into, so Madeline will stand right in front of the stove looking, because her best side is not from this angle, it's from either straight on or her left side. And we have two lights currently, other than the overhead can lights that are pointing in all over different locations. We've got two of the newer LEDs. I did use the softbox. One is right here, and the other one is right where I'm standing. You can see the reflection in the microwave there. So that's the basic fill lights that I'm using. I'm using this pass-through area as my control surface, and that's where my laptop has been. And then right here where I'm circling is where I've been having my Blackmagic camera, and then right in this right next doorway is where we've had the kind of it's turned out to be where I put the wide angle lens, and she will talk into it. But both of these have the ability to tilt down right into the food, or walk. He can Sam Cam, her husband, could walk into it. Now that we're going to be modifying that choice as well. So then this is what we're going to start blowing up and putting lights in better locations. And then the dining room back here will become the control room. And I have to run Ethernet all the way down the middle of the house to the other end where the modem is. So we have some work to do.
Yeah, for that setup, like I would suggest to put another like stove or burner on that counter that's close to the camera in that picture, just so that you have a nice like setup there where she's actually looking at the camera as opposed to having her back to it, where the stove is currently.
That's a good point. No, I like it. I see where this is that thing. This was the setup for the Today Show. And so we had to have 3 setups because we were doing the whole thing in 4 minutes, including the introduction. So we really only got about 3 to show the meal process. So we had, as I said, 3 different, we had a beginning, here's the raw, here's what it looks like when you're prepping it. And then at the end of the show, she opens up the oven and pulls out the finished dish all steaming and hot. But yes, back to the camera is not a good angle.
Does that counter have like shelves underneath it there?
Yes,
Because maybe
it does.
it can have, say for example, when she's prepping the ingredients like chopping stuff, maybe you'll have the chopping board there, but when she's done and it's all plated up ready for cooking, if she can put the chopping board down and the shelf underneath it, and then
Yeah.
go clean up as she goes, since it's a relatively small counter.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
Sky, I have a question about the cabinets there.
Sorry.
Above the microwave, do the cabinets, is there a break between the ceiling and the cabinets? Is there a little bit of space there, or are they flush, and do they go completely all the way to the ceiling?
It's a high ceiling, so we do have some room up there, and
I
so we can-
immediately want to put an overhead cam just with an easy clamp and a small camera going straight down. It looks like your lighting is perfect as is.
Well, it's really darn close, and we do have, like I said, a lot of those old 1970s can lights hanging from the ceiling that are filling in a lot of that light back there with the more red. But I've also been told you want to put a camera just off to the side because the steam will come up and fog your lens.
Well, sure, but I mean,
Yes.
again, like just a little off axis, like it's just a beautiful shot, and it's the one that that kicks
Yeah,
it up, that makes it look
absolutely.
really professional.
And again,
also,
thinking
ahead.
about ways to put some kind of T-bar in there, like a goalpost, that goes across will make
Yep.
a lot of it gives you a lot of flexibility where you can move things around. When you rely completely on stands, you'll have, it just will really slow you down. Get a lot of stuff gets in the way. You just get 2 places where, a couple places where you can run bars across things where you have a lot of flexibility is going to make it easier. Again, those are the fine details that kind of need to be sorted. Go ahead, Mike, and then Hasmukh.
When my screen just disappeared, you can hear me, I'm assuming, yeah?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so super quick. I would be completely remiss if I didn't give my wife a big plug. She's a voiceover artist, as you can see here, Christy Burns. Her first big, we both worked for Triage Entertainment, which produced Iron Chef. So her first big credit was she's the voice of time on Iron Chef.
Very good, very good.
And I'll tell you, it didn't pay much, but everybody loves that credit. And the Instant Pot has changed our life. I'm done.
You can probably do a whole live stream just on Instapot.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's amazing.
But to get back to there is a huge market there that Instapot, someone could approach Instapot and probably, there's a huge market of people who, that's the kind of market that you could have thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people watching a live stream to learn how to, do something better for what they're doing there. Hasmukh?
Yeah, coming to your earlier point of using webcams for a cooking class, what changed our production considerably was the huddle cam. Because once the huddle cam was on top looking over the working surface, the anxiety about managing that camera it just evaporated. Because with the remote, I could do a lot of things. And Guy helped me before the show with the color setup of that camera. The second thing was the iPhone with Filmic Pro, and I used the iPad to control the talent-facing side of the setup.
Right.
Then lastly, in terms of what different things we can do, I've been thinking about cook-along as an approach. Now, the idea was to pre-package some of the, especially spices and ingredients that are hard to get to for those who do not use them regularly. So package that as a cook-along startup, send it out a week ahead of the schedule, send out the recipe as well ahead of the schedule, and then also write in there all the prep work that can be done so that during the class, you don't waste time with the prep work.
Well, and I think that one of the things that's where you get into this kind of flipping the classroom, where I'm going to send you the list of what you need. I'm going to send you instructions. I'm going to send you the prep work. I'm going to send you maybe even videos on how to do the whole dish. You know, it's not about them learning how to do the dish with you. When people get the video of it and they get to at least skim through the video, they can, and the little techniques on how to do it. Now they have smarter questions for you. They're not just trying to keep up with what they're doing. I mean, I would give people a couple weeks. Now, I think that doing prepackaged things is going to be hard. I think you'd want to partner with a company that's already doing those. But I think that sending out lists of people where, you know, what people need exactly. A lot of times you get into this grain of salt is different than this salt. Iodized is different than C. And there's all these things that you really have to be specific about. But I think that there's a video. And again, the hard part with all of these things is going to be what works is doing it over and over and over again. Like, it's not, I'm going to do a cooking thing. It's figuring out that pattern and then doing it every week. But if you look at what we do it every day, you know, and you know, and it doesn't have to be every day. It can be once a week, but it has to be the same time every week. Like, you can't mess around with it. You cannot change anything with people or they'll stop coming, you know? And so, you know, you have to have it be like, you know, we're going to do this on Saturdays at 5 or Saturdays at 3 or whatever it is. And you have to do it all year. Like, you don't plan like, oh, we'll do 3 or 4 and see how it turns out. Think about it, because once you commit to it, you got to do it for you got to do it for 6 months. Like, you're not going to get off the ground by doing a show. You got to do it for 6 months and just commit yourself that it's going to be the same time. And what I would try to figure out is have Osmuk and Sky and other of us figure out where we sit in that time zone and see if we can get it to where we're doing them, you know, an hour apart, you know, so that you could, if someone wanted to cook a bunch of things, you know, or they could pick the ones that they wanted, you could cross-pollinate that process.
Well, ironically,
and then Alex.
we did have people asking, so what are you cooking this week? And it's like, oh crap, we're already starting to lose it. But I get when you said you're on the bubble. I do have this other angle I wanted to show Jason of this would have been.
And I have to stop on time, so or I have to at least drop out on time. So
okay, well we're there then. But here's the other angle. So yes, I've got some room above the cabinets. This was what we did for the Today Show, because we ended up doing everything with iPhones. But this would be where the main camera would traditionally. We could shoot right down the galley of the big table with all the food on it, and she's standing up there with all the beautiful in the corner. So that's
an easy clamp with a lens hood would be just perfect.
Well, and again, I would, you'll avoid this for a while, but eventually, if you decide you're going to turn it into something real in that kitchen, you're going to build a grid. You know, you're going to do a freestanding grid with 80/20, with 80/20, or not with 80/20, but with.
Well, I've got one that a friend's already loaning us from a present event.
Come up straight from the corners. The grid just comes from the corners.
Yep.
And you have to figure out that one corner will be hard, and then you cross it all, and then what we usually do is we push it into the walls to kind of stabilize it, but drop it, have it about 6 inches below, 6 or 8 inches below the ceiling. And then you have a grid that's every 3 feet or 2 feet, and you have a lot of room there, and then you can just create, but as you get more and more serious, you want to get everything off the floor.
No,
really
that's this week. You've given us that ability to do that, and we're doing it. We're serious.
Alex, what were you gonna say?
So I think maybe we could actually learn from Office Hours and create a green room type thing in which you have a producer who's a green room person, and people put their hands up and say, you can come in if you can show us on a tray the ingredients prepared in advance, to show that you put the work in advance. Show us the little tray, make sure that you've followed the instructions, and then you can be one of the 25 people that interact with the chef, and then we can have hundreds of others just watching. And then what happens is...
And asking questions
then you
over
have
text.
Yes, so then what you have is you have your 2 tiers, and people want to become one of the characters, and you build a little community around what we're doing, and then they become people who do this too.
I think you only need, I wouldn't even make it 25. I would say you have 5 people that are going to interact directly with the chef. and it's just a handful of people that are talking to them, just chattering. One of them, though, is the social desk that is throwing in all the questions from the audience. You know, this gets back into that hybrid thing. We want to minimize the number of people that are in the group. We're doing it because we're all answering questions, but I would want people who are asking questions to largely be doing it via text, you know, in that process.
We actually have an audience engagement officer. She's a beautiful woman that comes in as a part of the cast.
Right. So but I would do that over, you know, anyway. So I would minimize that so that, but definitely have it so that you can have the chatter that's going back and forth, you know, in that.
And you have your regulars. So you'd have somebody from here, somebody who's 12 hours time zones away, but it's a regular that's come back, not every week, but they just come regularly and create the community of, hey, you're one of us. Do you want to be one of us? Prepare in advance, and then you can be one of us talking directly.
Yep. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Hosmuk, and then we're gonna close it up.
I think like what would be really cool, at least for this group, would be to have like Hasmuk's wife as a co-host to Madeline, and you know, and vice versa. So we have like two chefs, like, you know, talking it out, driving a conversation that's constantly going on.
Take a look at what I put in the Makana.
I think we also get Alex's girlfriend, we get Hosmuk's wife, we get, you know, you build this. I think that there is this thing that we could build, this kind of very global cooking thing where we're trading notes between, you know, and people all over the world watching it's within this group is quite possible.
The train is ready. It's leaving the station.
Well, first, so here's the thing. For both you and Hosmuk, what needs to happen is you need to really standardize your pipeline. So we can't start, what we don't want to do is right now, you still got a kind of a whole bunch of cobbled cameras together and you're kind of figuring it all out. And there's all this stuff. We should get that working first, you know? So, you know, it's a standardized setup. It all works. It all looks good individually. Then we can start interlocking these together, but don't start you're adding more variables without solving the first variables. And so right now, both of your systems are pretty unstable.
Knew somebody that sold cameras.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Stuart, and then we're gonna close it up.
I feel terrible because I've got a really low budget setup in what used to be my grandmother's apartment with a camera over the kitchen bench as a drone workshop right now. But just one thing with Sky versus Hasmuk's wife, I vote for banjos.
Banjos. Okay, there we go. All right, everybody. Hopefully that gets people thinking about it. It gets the sauces, you know, turning, and so to speak, and get you thinking about that process. We'll keep on. You know, we'll probably do some kind of Saturday afternoon tests and play around with ideas and so on and so forth. And we're going to see Hosmuk getting better and Sky working on his. But I want people to be thinking about it because I think that there's this opportunity for us as a group to globally solve this problem where we could have multi-camera from 6, 8, you know, different locations at the same time. And if you think about, that's like something that's never been done before, you know, like it really hasn't been, like an interactive cooking event, you know, or a cooking thing where you have people, you know, and possibly even having an event like a Saturday that starts early from Hosmuk's house and ends late from, you know, from Sky's house or whatever. And we all over the world, we're cooking different things and people can watch them and interact with them. And I think that those are the kinds of things that we can do as a group because we have all this equipment and we have all this know-how and we can trade notes and we can kind of bring it up. And then, you know, again, I've talked about this in the past. If we figure it out, you know, the opportunities will come out of that, you know, and the biggest opportunity is we'll just get smarter about production and how to do it.
We'll learn to eat better. And the word banquet comes to mind, but I don't know what that means.
So anyway,
just the last word, Alex. I think what I've learned on office hours, like planning the setup, wiring the setup, documenting that, checking everything. And we've spoken about that so often that it's now making sense to me. It didn't make sense before, but now that I'm in production, it's that little detail that becomes so important. The second thing is all our classes have been almost deadpan. When I say deadpan, because the attendees are not asking questions, they're not interacting. And I'm so used to office hours where everybody's asking questions and there's this interplay. And this is like my wife's talking endlessly and she says, but nobody's asking any questions. What's the problem?
Well, part of it is training the audience to do that, you know, and this gets back into what I've been talking about is critical mass, is getting you know, part of why office hours always has an unlimited number of questions is because we have over 150 people watching. It is, these kinds of things work better with more people. This is why classrooms don't work as well, and why the teachers have to do so much lecturing and not enough just answering questions, is because the classrooms are too small. You know, like they're, and it's completely, this is something I learned, you know, almost accidentally, is that you really want 150 to 800 people. That's like a sweet spot of creating interactivity. And then there's ways to do it with more than 800, but 150 to 800, you just keep on getting a richer and richer conversation. That is better than anything you're going to get. And I know people want to have this little individual whatever, and we can create events like that for them, but they have to be, you know, it is so much easier to run a lively event with more people, you know, like, and so we have to figure out how to promote it. Maybe it's a bunch of us, you know, showing up and, you know, to kind of taking over, but we have to, I don't want to do that until we really have the quality in each one of these kitchens at a level that is worth people showing up. But then we can just have a bunch of us all, you know, we make it an event and we all show up and then interact and all try to do it ourselves and everything else. But right now, what we don't have is a solid foundation in each kitchen to kind of get that working. I know it's hard because I haven't built it. My wife doesn't want me to take over the kitchen. So that's my own challenge.
My elbows are in.
Yeah. Very good. All right. We gotta go. I'm 8 minutes late for something else. So we're going to start back up in the other one in 52 minutes. I got to get a bunch of stuff done between now and then. So thanks everybody. And we'll see you all. Some of you remember the link to it, but some of